And from here on out, this part will go back to being on the computer. Let's do that. There we go. This part will go back to being on. I'll upload it later. So, oh, hold on. Microphones. So, I hope you guys enjoyed that presentation. Thank you for the invite to speak at the Bitcoin Embassy Bar. David, you want to say a few words? No? Okay. All right. So let's open up the floor. And maybe I have to repeat the questions for the live viewers. But yeah, let's open up the floor. I mean, maybe you can come up. There it is. Oh, I should turn the camera. Anybody camera shy? Camera should be on you guys, not on me. Or maybe I can, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to move up so I'm also in the camera. Oh, I'll be, I want to, yeah, I can sit over there. Okay, so I'm going to clip on the mic. I'm going to move my camera back here so that I will also be in the shot. And I will, I'll stand, actually. I've been sitting all day. And okay, no, I'll just move the chair. Here we go. Chair to here. All right. Oh, come back over.
Okay.
Okay. There we go. All right. Perfect. Now everyone's in the shot. All right. Let's do it.
So first of all, I would like to, but there are still some projects around pretty good. Would like you to tell us the red flags of a shitcoin. Or
well, you got to tell me what the amazing projects are because I haven't seen any. So we have to start there, right? Like this is the argument. So I take the position that none of the altcoins are going to survive. Now, I know I will probably be wrong, and a few of them will survive, but it's irresponsible for me to guess which ones they're going to be. So I would rather be right. I'll have to do that. Sorry, guys, the internet keeps dropping out. So you'll have to name some, right? Because I haven't seen many. And see, there's lots of problems here, right? Everyone wants to build a decentralized internet, but it's only going to happen on Silicon Valley. Because let me give you like a simple problem with rebuilding the internet, right? We're going to rebuild the internet and we're going to make it decentralized. So it's not going to be a .com. It's going to be, let's say, .decentralized or whatever. I'm just making it up, right? Who's going to own Amazon.decentralized? Do you think it's going to be Amazon or some troll or the founder of that idea, right? So either you have to somehow protect every single .com that exists and give those companies the ability to control them on a decentralized internet. But that means it's not really decentralized, is it? But if you don't do that, you're now expecting Amazon.com to reserve Amazon something on every single idea that comes along. Like realistically, this doesn't work. Either they're centralized projects or they're never going to get adoption. And this is why Bitcoin is like the internet. No, hold the mic, because I still want to know what you think is awesome. So either either it's Bitcoin that had this, like, this, you can't replicate what Bitcoin did in its first 2 years. It's just not replicatable because it grew in the wild. People were mining it, spending money, mining it, no idea if it's going to pay off. Developers were developing on it, no idea if it's going to pay off. People were buying into it, hodling, no idea if it's going to pay off. Every single project after Bitcoin, everybody is doing it for profit. And if there's a centralized entity that you can point to that say people are investing in you for profit, then you're in violation of security laws. And that's a problem for them. And it's not a big problem yet, but it's about to be a big problem. I mean, Ripple and Ethereum, those are the big two. Will they be labeled securities or not? That's the big question. Until that question is answered, nobody knows. So I don't believe in these awesome projects because a lot of these awesome projects are happening because at the moment they're printing their own money. When they're not able to do that anymore, we'll see how awesome they are. And all of the awesome projects from late 2013 and early 2014 no longer exist. Like Ripple and Litecoin might be the only ones that are still around, and they don't really do anything, right? Like Litecoin is just inflation on Bitcoin, and Ripple shouldn't even be on CoinMarketCap because, never mind. Okay, so unless you want to answer what some of these awesome projects are, we can talk about the specifics of why they're not that awesome. Yeah.
I acknowledge that almost every single project is scrapped.
Yeah, but you could have also bought, you know, the wrong Zoom, Z-O-O-M, at half a cent and then watch it go to $6, right? Like that doesn't, the fact that something goes up in value due to irrational misunderstanding does not make it a good project. It just means that some people were able to make a lot of money and some people were able to lose a lot of money. Like what has Dash actually done? You know, they think they're doing good things in Venezuela, but let's see what happens to all the people that put all their money in Dash in Venezuela and then Dash disappears. Like what has Dash really done? And Ethereum is now rebuilding itself because they know they're unscalable as Ethereum 2.0 to try and migrate your token. And as of 2 months ago, everyone is talking about how Binance is the new Ethereum. And in a few years, everyone's going to talk about how XYZ is the new Binance because those things are actually in competition with each other. And they're in competition for putting CryptoKitties on their platform. Like, not working. Oh, I'm on that one.
Your turn now.
Yeah, it's something's weird. It's all right. Well, it's fine. No, it's okay. If it doesn't record, it doesn't record. All right, next question.
You once thought that there was a token that it was not so scammy. What's the question? What's for you a token that is not so scammy? I had like 3 questions. It's amazing to see you. The second one is what's your take on tokenized securities? Well, I take the microphone, sorry. And the other one is what is your favorite indicator after the 3 you use from the marks, the lines, and the volume?
Sure. I guess we'll do the easiest one first. So when it comes to my trading, I use the shape of the candlestick and the price action first. Chart patterns like triangle second, time to mark third, and after that, I do support and resistance. There's still tequila there. And the second question, the tokenized securities. Like, look, if you're going to be a security, it's so much safer for you to be a security on a centralized market. Like, when you go public on the New York Stock Exchange or the Mexican Stock Exchange, the database is there. Like, you're not responsible for your stock disappearing. But if you go security token, what is the blockchain your security token is on? If it's Bitcoin, which is a little difficult still, maybe even impossible yet because it'll blow the chain, Bitcoin may survive for the next 20, 30 years. But if it's Ethereum, if it's EOS, where are you going to put your security token on? Like, what blockchain, and how secure is that blockchain, right? Like, what if your token gets hacked because it's on Ethereum and there was a bad smart contract? Like, what do you do, right? Like, the government will hold you responsible. It was your bad decision. Unless the government has blessed Ethereum and the government said Ethereum is fully legit and you can build on it, and if Ethereum disappears, we, the government, are responsible. I don't see that. Hopefully that's not going to happen, right? So my problem with security tokens is, sure, you can be regulatory compliant, which again is difficult to do if your token is being traded on anonymous exchanges traded by 13-year-olds, right? So even if your token can be fully regulatory compliant to be a security, you still have the issue of the technological risk of where is that token, like what database is it sitting on? So your final question, the live stream. So actually it's easier now because of what happened the other day, the no action letter from the SEC for the airline token. The airline created a token. And they said, hey, this token, we need it for such purposes. It'll be 1-to-1 to Bitcoin. It will, sorry, that's Bitcoin, $2. It'll be fully within our system. We will know every single person that has it. And the reason we need this token is so that people can like pay us on the weekends when banks are closed. So that's what happened. So this token got approval, and they said, yeah, it's, but when I read the details of what the token is, I'm like, this is the worst ICO in history. How are they going to make money? But they're not. The token is going to be, one token is $1. It's only in their own, they know every single person that owns it. It's not going to be traded on exchanges. That's a token. Now, one scale up from that, I think is also potentially legit. Now, to me, if you're going to use a blockchain, it needs to have the qualities of a blockchain, being anonymous data transfer. So an example of a token that I'm not going to name, but so a membership token. Let's say the Bitcoin Embassy Bar decided to create a token as a membership. So if you have a membership, let's say all your drinks are 20% off, and you get the front row tables for when Tone Base comes to speak at a meetup, right? So it's a membership token. I mean, unfortunately, at the moment, it'll probably trade on Ethereum, but hopefully it can trade on Bitcoin. And this membership token could fluctuate in value based on how much people value this membership. Now, as the owner of the Embassy Bar, Bitcoin Embassy Bar, you can issue as many of them as you like based on demand. Because if you issue too many, then people are going to complain and they're going to not want to have the membership because it's overcrowded. If you issue too little, they're going to probably be very valuable and people are going to try to profit from that membership. But you have the option to issue more of them based on supply and demand of a membership, just like a gym. But basically, it's a way to say, hey, yes, you are a member of this and you get extra privileges. And you don't have to spend this token. The token has a value. The token can fluctuate, it even can fluctuate in value. You can accept it. If you want to pay me in that token, fine. But if you don't have X amount of tokens, then you don't have that privilege. You can have multiple tiers. But this is an example of a token that no one should buy for speculation to get rich. It's a token that you buy just to have extra privileges in this space, like a gym membership. And the beauty of it is that it's kind of anonymous because they don't need to know who you are. They may have to, maybe not here in Mexico, somebody may have to check your ID to make sure you're of age, but it's the kind of membership that they don't need to know your personal information. They don't need your email. They don't need your name. They don't need your personal information, but you are a member and you are cryptographically a member without having to submit any personal information. Now you can also say, hey, what if my friend is coming to town and I'm not gonna go there for a party, but my friend wants to go there for a party? Why don't I just say, I'll just send it to him the day before and then he'll show up because he has the membership token. And your answer would be great. He's coming here, he's gonna buy alcohol, he's gonna buy a steak. So you actually want this fast, instant transfer of that token. Now you don't want it too fast because then a person will come in, they'll show the token, and then they'll send it to someone else will come in, right? So there could be some kind of safeguard. There needs to be a timestamp that I've held this token for more than 24 hours in order to avoid a double spend, right? But this is an example of a use of a blockchain that both sides can benefit from, and there should be no reason to buy this thing just to speculate on its value and flip it. So that's a use case for a blockchain token that I kind of understand and is not scamming. Another example is what Blockchain Capital did with their token. I think this was supposed to do. I think they did something different. And what they did was they raised $100 million for a VC round of funding that they were going to invest in blockchain companies. But they are legitimate VC. Now you can debate whether you should or shouldn't give them money to invest in blockchain companies, but they're a legitimate company. So they raised $90 million from qualified investors, traditional investors. And then the final $10 million, they created a token where one blockchain capital token is worth $1 US in the beginning. And this way they allowed people to invest in this $100 million pool of money at $1 increments. And they sold this token outside the US to allow non-US people to participate in a US VC. So they followed some regulation. Now, what happens after that? So how do the companies benefit? Well, the buyer of that token, if they want to participate in a venture capital fund, hey, I have $100 that's pooled in this fund, and it gets invested. Now, what is this token worth? Now, the token has an underlying value. They know, they have an idea of how much how that token is performing, because that money was invested in companies, and those companies have valuations, and those companies have returns. But this token is freely traded on the open market as an ICO. Now, this token was trading at like a $150 premium. Started at $1, was trading for $2.50. Now, that's actually ridiculous, because you know that a VC is not going to make that kind of return in a year or two. Not on that entire pool. They diversify, but they don't care. But if the token ever trades below what it's worth because of fear, the company can just buy them back because they know the money is invested in other companies. So again, this is a token that you only buy and you speculate on how much that dollar of each token is performing inside an investor portfolio. But then it should have a little bit of a premium in price because you can easily move it without KYC through the exchanges. Anybody can own that little piece, right? So that's another example of a legitimate ICO token, because it's not done for speculative purposes for the user, other than speculating on how the VC is going to perform by investing in the VC. And the token isn't created to fund the company. The company already exists. It's one of the things that the SEC said. If you're going to create a token, you better have a company. And that token better be, useful from day one, not like Ethereum. Not only was the token not useful from day one, the token didn't even exist. They sold the token to get the money to build Ethereum, the token. So, so that's another example of you already have an established company. The company is already legit, and this is just a token within the company. So these are examples of legitimate use cases of a blockchain and tokens. Long explanation, but I'm hoping it's very useful.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for being here.
Yes.
I want to ask you about the Lightning Network. I know that you are a supporter of the Lightning Network, and I want to know from your perspective, if you think that the user experience of the Lightning Network can be a problem for it to become like a successful thing, because I work doing digital products, and I know the importance of a good user experience on successful products or companies. So what is your view about that?
Sure. Good question. So I am not an expert on a Lightning Network by any means. I've done like 2 Lightning transactions in my life, but the store on my website does accept Lightning transactions. Tier 2. Perfect. Now, did you build it? Did you build it? No, right? So you hired someone experienced in the Lightning Network to build it for you. Okay. Wait, did you do it yourself? Did you integrate it yourself, or you had somebody do it? Okay, so you did it yourself. So the thing is, I do believe in a Lightning Network. Now, why do I believe in a Lightning Network? I believe in a Lightning Network because it was created by smart developers that I trust to be smart developers that know what they're doing. I used to manage developers, kind of oversee some developers on Wall Street. And you have to trust the smart people that you hire to build the good stuff. And the reason why I don't worry about the user experience of Lightning is because when it works and everyone starts using it, there will be a huge incentive to make it user-friendly. And it will eventually be user-friendly. The first time when I got to my university and I had to use my university email, I had to use Unix commands. Anybody used Unix commands? Anybody used Unix commands to check their email? Right. So how come we don't use Unix commands to check our email today? Right? Because it had to be user-friendly because it was useful. So the more useful Lightning is and the more people use it, the more incentivized everybody will be to make it more useful. So, for example, a major business that relies on Lightning will happily spend the money to make a user-friendly version that other people will be able to use because it benefits everyone, or other people will be able to copy. So Lightning is still very early, and the focus is making sure that it works. After it works, then you start making it user-friendly. Bitcoin wasn't very user-friendly between 2010 and 2012. It became user-friendly the more useful Bitcoin became. And Bitcoin hardware wallets will be more user-friendly. It will all be more user-friendly the more useful it is, because there is an incentive to make it more useful. That's why I don't worry about it.
Thanks.
Hi, thank you for being here. What do you consider to have in a smart portfolio? Only Bitcoin or other altcoins? And Bitcoin is for holds, for like in the long run, or basically for scalping?
Sure. So I think that Bitcoin helps diversify your traditional portfolio. I'm really not repeating the question, so I hope it's loud enough for my microphones. I think it is. So I think Bitcoin does a great job diversifying your traditional portfolio. I don't believe in altcoins diversifying Bitcoin's portfolio because everything everything relies on Bitcoin. If Bitcoin fails, everything fails. Store of value property is gone. No one will ever trust a blockchain with store of value. Everything becomes like the Venezuelan bolivar. You get it, you spend it. I mean, I'll still accept, if Bitcoin goes down, I'll accept any cryptocurrency for my services. I'll just immediately sell it for dollars. I may not even like do it myself. I'll go through a payment processor. I'll be like the business that doesn't hold the Bitcoin, businesses that I don't really support. I never spend my Bitcoin in businesses that use a payment processor that converts into fiat immediately. I don't support those businesses because they're just going to sell my Bitcoin in the open market. So, so to me, diversifying your Bitcoin portfolio with other altcoins is crazy. Altcoins will go down faster in a bear market. They might go up faster in a bull market. And I think that eventually Bitcoin will go up faster than the altcoins. It'll separate. Now, if you're going to hold Bitcoin long term, I think that you just hold the Bitcoin. If you want to speculate and trade other stuff, speculate and trade other stuff. But when we talk about portfolio diversification, we're talking long-term investment and not speculative trading. So I say just Bitcoin. If you're going to speculative trade, trade whatever makes you money.
What happened yesterday? It was the fear of the market, or the big wallets were down offering Bitcoins to lower the price so they can.
Oh no! Yesterday was just a panic on Bitfinex and Tether. It was the news that the New York state attorney is going after Bitfinex. Now it's funny. Now it looks like the U.S. government actually froze Bitfinex's money 6 months ago, and because the U.S. government froze their money, they had to take drastic measures to pay people out that the New York State is now saying was against the law. So it's kind of ironic, but it does go into what I've been saying for years, that the U.S. government can show up and confiscate the underlying dollars of Tether anytime they like. And that was always going to be the obvious end to Tether. And it looks like it is. And that panicked the market. Now, is Tether going down good or bad for Bitcoin? It's probably good, because now people have to, people will hold their money in Bitcoin. But the problem is, and this is the debatable part with David right here and others, they think the market has bottomed and I don't. So the question becomes, if the market has bottomed, this news may actually be good for Bitcoin and have it go up. If we are still in a bear market, like Tyler and I think we are, then the news will be seen as bad. So I can flip the news. I can make this news sound good if we're in a bull market. I can make it sound bad if we're in a bear market. Here's the example of this being good news if it was obvious, right? Look, it's not obvious to me that we're in a bull market. If this happened in early 2017, when no bad news hit the market, like for me, it was Bitmain, the big blocks, the panic, I was bullish because we're in a bull market. ETF gets rejected. I was bullish because we're in a bull market, right? There was no such thing as bad news. It was bad news that was ignored. Right now, we're in a maybe bull, maybe bear. Okay, still debatable. So if we were in a full-blown bull market, this is great news. Everyone has to sell their Tether and buy into Bitcoin. It will pump Bitcoin. People are not going to trust the stable coins. People will have to use Bitcoin once again to go in and out of their shitcoins. Great news for Bitcoin if we're in a bull market. If we're in a bear market, here's how this news is terrible. If the New York government can just shut down Bitfinex, they can shut down any exchange. So all the U.S. government has to do is get the European government and the Australian government and maybe the Japanese, they're all friends, get them all on a phone call, get the IMF, and say, hey, let's pick a good date, and let's shut down 5 of the top unregulated Bitcoin exchanges, and that will immediately drop the Bitcoin price to about $500. Everybody will panic. No one will be able to withdraw their Bitcoin. We can confiscate all of it, and we can just like cause havoc in the market, right? So the idea that the US government can actually go after and shut down Bitfinex could cause fear that they can do it to any exchange that they haven't approved, which is like almost all of them, right? And all they need to do is have a slight coordination, which is difficult. I will admit, it's difficult for countries to coordinate, especially on something that's $100 billion in market cap. It's really not that important. But if they wanted to, and it's all about the perception. If people are scared that something like this may happen, and yes, I'm spreading FUD that something like this can happen, that could panic the market and cause the price to drop in fear that this can happen. Whether it happens or not becomes irrelevant. So this is how this news hurts the market. And if we were obviously in a bear market, this would have been catastrophic. Like if this news hit the wires like in early January, late December, we would have easily gone down to 1,500, probably 1,000. You agree? Right. Now, right now, if this news, if the price of Bitcoin doesn't go to 4,000 and news like this, and also what happened with Tether back in October when there was real FUD and that Tether was, well, maybe it wasn't real FUD because around that time, some people must have known that Tether got their bank accounts frozen. So now, again, this is like the insider information stuff, right? This gives the SEC potentially, if they, or CFTC, if they had jurisdiction on all of these exchanges, they can now go, so the US government froze Tether's bank account back in October. There was fear that Tether was insolvent back in October, but there was never any public information that the bank account of Tether was frozen back in October. So who knew, who traded, which exchanges participated? You go and find those people and you have a little chat with them. How did you know this information? Who told it to you? And those people are insider feeding information, and they usually go to prison. Now, there's no such thing as insider information on commodities and currencies. Where Bitcoin fits in this mess, I don't know, right? But this is the idea, right? So now you can say this news, if Tether is insolvent, but now you have other stablecoins. Tether is insolvent and there's a run on Tether to buy into Bitcoin. That's like irrational rise in the price of Bitcoin, which I said happened in October, and hence we still went down. But this didn't happen this time. Yesterday, the price of Bitcoin dropped. So the fear that the US government can shut down any exchange they want is more predominant than the fear of losing that Tether and rushing it into Bitcoin like what happened in October. And if that fear starts to grow, then the price of Bitcoin will go lower. But if Bitcoin can stabilize above 4,000 and brush off this news and then go back up to make new highs around 6,000, then I will have to agree that the bear market has ended. But for now, I think it's too early to tell if this news is going to be shaken off because we're in a bull market, or this news will start to snowball into more and more fear trying to get people to get out of Bitcoin. Because if you are a hedge fund holding client money and you're holding that client money in Bitfinex, and the US government just went after it and froze it, you as a hedge fund have a big problem. You have to explain to your investors how your dumbass chose an exchange that's under the eye of the US government, because the reason why they gave you the money is because you're supposed to be smarter and know how to invest that money. And if you're investing it with Bitfinex, what are you doing? So what happens to the regulated institutions that have invested in Bitcoin? It's like the news is breaking now that, like, is it Ameritrade and who else? Like the brokers, like Ameritrade is offering or about to offer Bitcoin trading. The question is how? Are they holding the Bitcoin, or are they using an exchange for you to, and holding the Bitcoin on that exchange? And what exchange did they choose? Because they're supposed to be responsible. And if, let's say, a company like Ameritrade is offering you Bitcoin trading, but they're using Bitfinex to give it to you, they ain't gonna be, and they screwed up like this, they're gonna want to get out of that, right? So, and now the bad news is gonna snowball. Oh, Ameritrade and Fidelity are not gonna actually do it. Backed is not gonna actually happen. So we'll see what happens with the news. The same news can be good in the same news. Bad news could be ignored in a bull market. Bad news could be spun into good news. But in a bear market, bad news is catastrophic. Good news is ignored. And based on the way price is acting, I have no idea if this is good news, bad news, or bad news being brushed off, good news being sold because we're in a bear market. It's just Bitcoin is in this weird zone. I still think it's going to make a lower low, but I'm close to 50-50. The last two out of three trades I've made were bullish. So if the trade's bullish, the trade's bullish. All right, question right behind you.
Then it's a,
Whoa. Okay.
it's a pleasure to be with you. Then
A little further, right. There you go.
The first question is about, like, you said the altcoins like Ether and all the others, like, it's a token that is backed by nothing. So basically what you're saying that, like, the only safe, so to say, investment in long term is Bitcoin. And another question is, like, do you see any future in tether, or do you think it's going to be like totally frozen by the government?
Oh yeah, no, I think tether is done. I mean, is there a future in stable coins pegged to the US dollar? Yeah, of course, because that's what the US dollar is. The US government would love to get rid of the paper dollars, and they don't care if it's JP Morgan or any other regulated institution that does it. Now, can Binance give you a US dollar stable token? I don't think so, right? Because they're a foreign entity, they're a foreign company, and the US government can say, hey, you can't just hold our money at the bank, like with Bitfinex, right? So if Binance wants to create a stable coin and hold US dollars in a bank, what the US just did to Bitfinex, they can do to Binance. They can just call the bank and say, you're holding our money. We have proof that this money was used illegally through the token, and we're taking it and we're freezing it, and we're confiscating it, right? Now, if JP Morgan is holding that money, not a problem, right? So is there a future in altcoins? Sure. Altcoins, stable coins. Sure. Are they any kind of innovation from what we had in 1990? No, they're not. Not at all. As far as Ethereum goes, I mean, being backed by nothing is what gives it strength. That's not that. Of all the issues I have with Ethereum, the fact that it's not backed by anything is not one of them. Bitcoin isn't backed by anything either. That's what gives it strength. not being backed by anything. This is the problem with stable coins. A stable coin has to be backed by the US dollar. That means the US dollar can be confiscated by the US government. Not being backed by anything like Bitcoin makes it impossible to confiscate the underlying product that is backing it. So that's the good part. I mean, the main reason why I don't like Ethereum is because the smart people that I trust explain to me why it's not sustainable. And they're way smarter than Vitalik. They always were. And that's why, that's the main reason why I don't like Ethereum. And also, even if Ethereum succeeds, Ethereum fails by succeeding. If Ethereum succeeds and it proves to the world that the world needs decentralized smart contracts, it will just be recreated without the Ethereum token. Because it'll be more efficient. Because you shouldn't need your own money to sell the product. So if the world does need decentralized smart contracts, they will be side chains on top of Bitcoin. Or they'll be in a database where the contract is decentralized, but the database is centralized and controlled, and you can use dollars to pay for those contracts. But the contract execution is decentralized.
Okay, and I have like 3 more questions together. Like, what do you think about all the food that is coming out from China? Like, they are banning the mining Bitcoin in China or India. They're saying that they are going to completely ban Bitcoin again. And like, the other question is, like you said before, that the US government can ban or freeze any exchange. Do you think that could happen in decentralized exchange like Binance Dex?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 2 questions. The first one was China banning mining and India banned Bitcoin. Doesn't matter. I'm sorry. Like I said this from the day I started streaming. China doesn't matter. It just doesn't. It mattered for a little bit because that's where all the money was coming from, that's where all the mining was. But when all of the mining is in your country, when every single company is moving to your country to start a blockchain business, the government will make it illegal. This happened. Everybody moved to Bali. They ended it. Then everybody moved to somewhere else. Binance then moved to Brazil, I think, and then they moved to Malta. And I think eventually Malta is going to say, no, we don't want all you Bitcoiners, get out. So mining ban in China, it doesn't matter. Mining will go somewhere else, right? I'm happy that China banned mining because I got tired of answering the question, and that Nouriel Roubini still says mining is centralized in China, all the mining takes place in China. Right now, almost it seems like no mining takes place in China now, right? So it kills this stupid argument that that China is monopolizing Bitcoin. Okay. Oh, I'll actually take a cup of coffee. Cappuccino's great. Same thing. Those cappuccinos. So it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm mining with a single miner. Like, it may be a good thing. Again, I can spin the news in a good way and in a bad way, right? Like, everything is good and bad. Let's say every country decides to ban giant mining farms. I mean, they're not going to ban my one miner in my house. In fact, a global ban on mining farms will incentivize every single person in this room to run a single miner in their house, because that's not bannable, right? Like, it's kind of like downloading a song is banned and everyone does it, right? Like, mining is banned, but they're not going to know if you have one miner running in your house. So a ban on mining operations could actually greatly decentralize Bitcoin. Sure, the hash power is going to dip in the beginning big time, but then it will, eventually it'll be more decentralized, right? So I can easily spin that news in a good way, that a mining ban would be awesome. Oh, and your other question. What was the other question?
About decentralized exchange.
Oh, yeah. There's no such thing as a decentralized exchange. Multiple reasons. One, there's a company paying a bunch of developers to decentralize the exchange. Otherwise, no one's going to be working on it, right? So all you got to do is show up at that company's office and arrest the CEO that's paying the people. And there it goes, right? Now, if you manage to get past that stage and you built a decentralized exchange, who is incentivized to continue to fix bugs? Who is incentivized to make it better, right? Is the decentralized exchange collecting fees on your transactions? If it is, where are they going? Who's responsible for distributing those fees to the developers and the bug fixers? I guess you can try to automate that, but who's responsible for that code? Like, a decentralized exchange is totally centralized. It's a joke. It's a total joke that it's decentralized. Someone has to be in charge. If you do build a true decentralized exchange and something goes horribly wrong, who is incentivized to say, I will fix it? Like, it's not like Bitcoin. See, in Bitcoin, the Bitcoin token itself is all the incentivization needed to fix the Bitcoin problem, not to mention all of the companies that are relying on Bitcoin are incentivized to fix the problem. How many companies are going to be relying on a decentralized exchange? In fact, companies don't want a decentralized exchange. Companies want client support and someone to be held accountable and someone to sue if shit goes wrong. So, like, here's another example. Are you more interested in getting into an Uber or a decentralized version of Uber when you go outside, right? Like, at least Uber has some kind of mechanism to validate the driver. Like you're not gonna get in a decentralized Uber here in Mexico. Like, how do you know who's responsible for something happening? I mean, these are real problems that may never have solutions. And if they have solutions, trust me, some guy that heard of blockchain last year is not going to be the one that solves it. Like, it's people have been trying to create Bitcoin for 20 years, and that's how it came about. You can read the emails. I was reading emails from Peter Todd trying to sell. It's in my other presentation. You probably put it on the screen, right? We're still screen sharing. Not on the live chat, but no, not on the. I'm not screen sharing for the live audience, but because since I have it up, like, here's another presentation, right? This is my other presentation that I usually do. Let me see. It's got some cool slides. I guess I can screen share. Hold on. I can screen share. Yeah, no copyrights in this one. I can, this one is all my own work, I think. Not all my own work, but let me go to the end. It's a pretty cool presentation. Yeah, so I did on the main stage, yeah. And the one I did at Unconfiscatable. Yeah, so it's right at the end. Venezuelan currency. Got a lot of slides. Yeah, here we go. This one. Let's read that, right? So I'm reading the thing in bold. Look at the date on the email. The date on the email is March 10, 2001, Saturday, 2 p.m. Not sure what time zone. Looks like UTC time. So it's around 2 p.m. UTC time. Personally, I like the idea of hash cash. If and only if hash cache is the stuff that Adam Back created that Satoshi used. Personally, I like the idea of hash cache if and only if it's structured like a real currency as opposed to simply proof of work. In the real world, you pay for resources used. In many cases, this should also be a peer-to-peer and other computer systems. Should also apply to peer-to-peer and other computer systems. Of course, getting hash cache workable as a real currency is extremely difficult. I've thought of a scheme that would work. Coins are signed by the owner and can only be changed, signed to a different owner by the owner, except you need a decentralized database, decentralized central database. So central means single. You need a single decentralized database of all the hash cache that's been minted. Unworkable, shit, spend twice problem. So basically the double spend, right? So at the end, wait, let me slide this over. Come on, there it is. Unworkable, shit, spend twice problem, the double spend problem. Who wrote this email? Peter Todd, 15 years old, Saturday afternoon. Okay? That's what he's doing at 15. He's talking to Hal Finney on pretty much how to build Bitcoin at 15. And couldn't do it because they didn't have the mining. And that's what Satoshi did. Satoshi did this. When they solve proof of work, they broadcast the block to everyone, and the block is added to the blockchain. That's what Bitcoin is. The word blockchain was never in the white paper. It was just a way to describe what proof of work does with their template Venn diagram, but I couldn't. So I could only do a 4. And I broke. And I separated all the altcoins. Oh, come on. I separated all the altcoins into proof of work coins, proof of other nonsense stuff, ICOs and airdrops, and blockchains / databases. Some of them have tokens, some of them don't. Hyperledger R3 don't have tokens. Ripple is a database with a token that was an ICO. Ethereum is a proof of work token that is a database. Blockchain. RSK is, hopefully they're gonna pull it off so that they're not an ICO, but they had an ICO, but that's not the RSK token. It gets complicated. The scammiest of them all is, of course, Token Pay, because it was an ICO that became proof of stake, and that's just horrible. These things have asterisks because they just take money from the miners in order to spend that money on promotion and sponsor conferences. Like, it's a horrible matrix, basically, of nonsense. Anyway, that's it for screen share. Okay, so I guess next question. I think I answered you.
Yes.
All right.
Just last 2 questions. What do you think about all the people migrating from Ethereum to Tron, all the dApp developers? Do you see any future in Tron, or just in Sun is just a scam?
No, I see no future in Tron. I mean, I didn't even know that. I thought they were all going to EOS, and now they're all talking about going to Binance. They're all going to move. Like, the more centralized your smart contract database is, the more useful you are to the ICOs. Because the more decentralized you are, the more shit that can go wrong. Like ICOs, STOs, the last thing they need is Ethereum. They want something like EOS, where 21 people can get on a phone call and solve your problem.
I don't 2 questions in real life. A couple of questions on first question on privacy. there's a lot of people in the space trying to push privacy, I think for good reasons. Economy and being self. I wonder, there's some arguments that about why governments haven't been collectively going after really trying to block Bitcoin in general or cryptocurrency in general. One of them is that governments like Bitcoin because they can track it, right? So my question is, do you buy that argument?
Not really. Bitcoin is not that easy to track if you know what you're doing. If you know what you're doing in Bitcoin, it's not that easy to track. And it's going to become harder and harder to track because Bitcoin developers. Is that random outside? We got a mariachi band outside. So Bitcoin is easy to track if you don't care about your privacy. If you care about your privacy, Bitcoin, you can make Bitcoin very hard to track. Now, governments like easy, stupid criminals. So they're going after the ones that are not masking their Bitcoin transactions. On the flip side, using private currencies like Monero, there's not enough liquidity there. No one's going to be using it, not for major scales, right? So the government goes after serious players. And serious players don't, like for the really serious criminals, Bitcoin doesn't even have enough liquidity. For the medium serious criminals, Bitcoin has enough liquidity. For the very low criminals, Monero has enough liquidity. They don't care about those people, right? So, and also, Bitcoin is too small. So it kind of still goes under the radar. But Bitcoin will have all the privacy it needs.
And so perhaps extending a little bit, if anything, what would be the biggest risk of Bitcoin actually failing? I mean, I don't think, I hope it's not going to fail. But are you worried about things like quantum computing or any other? That hasn't been discovered, for instance.
I'm not worried about quantum computers too much. I think maybe in 10 years, but there will be improvements made. Maybe challenging to get them in because there'll be a lot of miners like last time. They're like, no, we want Bitcoin to fail because somehow we'll make more money on the fail. I don't know how, but like with the big blocks. And I mean, technologically, sure, it can fail and it's a risk, but I trust the smart developers that are coding it that it won't fail. A government crackdown could hurt a lot. Bitcoin will survive, but it'll struggle. I'm pretty confident. I'm not too worried about Bitcoin. I'm still pretty confident in Bitcoin in the long term. I mean, there could be other scenarios that panic Bitcoin heavily. Like if the price goes down below 2,000 and stays there for a while, could be dangerous for the mining system, for the mining network. There are concerns. There are concerns. Serious hacks of old wallets, like here's the concern about quantum computers. It's not that it's going to break Bitcoin, is that someone is going to crack Satoshi's private key, and now someone has a 500,000 Bitcoin that doesn't actually deserve them, and who knows what they're going to do with them. So those are just some of the concerns, but I think Bitcoin is here to stay. I think this is truly revolutionary technology. I don't think it's going anywhere.
Last question. What would happen if Satoshi's real identity would ever be revealed? What do you think it would do to what would happen?
Potentially, Bitcoin becomes in violation of security laws at that point. So the highest probability is that Satoshi is actually dead, or the ringleader of the group is dead, and two other key people that seem to have been around in the very first days, David Kleinman, Hal Finney, they're also already dead. So the probability of Satoshi being found is small. I mean, if Satoshi is found now, It'll be cause a little havoc. There'll be fear that he's gonna, now that he's been found, he's gonna move the coins. There will be a godlike following like we have with Craig Wright. And those people will look for Satoshi to what to do. And Satoshi is not gonna be able to do anything because the node operators, I mean, I'm not gonna be listening to him. I'm gonna be listening to the 30 to 40 people that I really trust that know Bitcoin better than me. And what their consensus opinion is. And if Satoshi decides to fork Bitcoin the way Craig Wright tried to do it, we may have an issue. And that's the biggest threat to Bitcoin is miscommunication, misunderstanding. Now, the other question is, people are going to be fearful of what is he going to do with the coins. And the only solution that I can, if Satoshi's listening, and maybe he's watching, Satoshi's watching, and you are discovered or you want to be discovered, and you want to ease the economic fear and panic of you cashing in your coins, all you got to do is announce and maybe build a smart contract on Bitcoin to release your Bitcoin to future mining reward. So after the mining reward goes below 1 Bitcoin, you have like a smart contract that adds some of your Bitcoin to make the mining reward 1 Bitcoin until your coins are drained, right? So just add your Bitcoin to future mining, and that would decentralize your coins, and that fear would go away that you're gonna cash in. So that's a good solution to easing the economic panic. Oh, yeah, let's go back there.
Thank you. What's your opinion in initiatives like Nodal, Casa, and Raspberries to incentivize people to have their own node? And do you think that would progress for more people to have their node?
So I think Casa is a pretty good initiative. I have my friends are build Casa. I mean, Jameson Lopp, Elena's involved, and a few others. So I think Casa is a great initiative to get more people to decentralize Bitcoin and run nodes. I can also create a little criticism and probably a lot of trolls. When you have a box that kind of does everything for you, it may potentially be dangerous in the future. Now, I trust the people that built the Casa node of their intentions. But Casa is still a company. And that company could be bought out. It could be acquired. Jameson Lopp can go do something else. All of the right people can leave, and the wrong people can take over. And now you have a box. And you're in control of that box. And you can potentially, I don't know how Casa works. I don't have one. If you're watching Casa, I would love a Casa node so I can play around with it. I don't know when I'll find the time, but it'll add to my collection of all of the Bitcoin hardware because I have it all in my house. But I can potentially see a Trojan horse in the future because it's just like a politician creating a law that says, I just created a law that will, allow me to take away everybody's property because this one good thing can be done with it. But I will never abuse the law. But you're not going to be the person in charge of that country for the rest of its history, right? And then someone else gets in there and they're going to abuse the law, right? So having a box and depending on a box to do it for you could potentially be dangerous in the future. Like, a Windows machine that I use right there, right? Like, but for ease of use, I have to use it, right? Like the smart thing to do is to build your own Linux computer. But as I showed with VA Linux, not exactly successful, and no one is going to do it, right? So I have my own node running. I took the time to learn how to build a node. Like, I would rather have 50,000 or 100,000 nodes around the world of people running a node and know what they're doing than 1 million nodes with more than half of them controlled by a box. That's my slight counter argument. But having said that, I think Casa node is doing more good than bad.
I actually own a Casa node after having, I'm launching a couple of nodes with a lot of effort and trouble to keep them running. Well, I'm more slow.
Right. But again, my concern is what happens in 20 years, right? So to ease that concern, and I don't know if Casa has done this, is for Casa to have like a kill switch, like a canary, a smart contracts, eventually on Bitcoin, saying that under certain conditions, the node is turned off instead of like, I don't know how it works. I honestly don't know much about it, right? All I know is if it's like a Windows machine that updates the software for you, that could potentially be dangerous in the future. But I could be totally wrong about Casa. Like the live chat could be totally destroying me right now.
They should send you a note. They should send you a note.
Yeah, that's only 1/3 of the step. The other 2/3 is forcing me to actually play around with it. I can look at the live chat and watch them like destroy me on my on my understanding of a Casa node. But like I said, it's a lot. It's right now what makes Bitcoin decentralized is the number of nodes. And as long as Casa is run by the right people, I think Casa is doing great. But if Casa gets acquired by Microsoft, or Facebook or Google, you may throw your Casa node in the garbage, but what about the 300,000 merchants that might be using a Casa node and decentralizing Bitcoin in a way that, I think you guys get the point.
I know that this might sound like a conspiracy, but have you ever considered the idea that a single entity has the whole control over the Bitcoin network? Like, I don't know, central banks?
No.
Reserve? No?
No, I have no fear. Like, why? I mean, the only way that would happen, the only way like a central entity, like a central bank or the collusion would have control of Bitcoin is if they were there from 2010 and they were not. Like, it's pretty obvious that they weren't because nobody cared about it. So, is Bitcoin perfect? Not really. It was done as perfect as it could be at the time, and it's gonna have to, work through that. Would have been great to have Schnorr signatures from the start, but it was copyrighted and Satoshi didn't do it. Now, I've thought about this actually. People say, well, why would Satoshi care about copyright of the code? Why would he care? Why didn't he just use Schnorr signatures, which are clearly much better, way more quantum resistant, way more create way more privacy, add way more scaling? Why didn't he use those from the start? Well, there was a copyright on that. So my only explanation is, if that code that Satoshi released had any copyright component, it would have been a big problem for the early miners. Because then an early miner in those early days would have potentially been in criminal violation. And my guess is that was his fear, that in the early days of mining, people would start to get arrested for mining Bitcoin due to a copyright law. And then Bitcoin might never take off. That's my best thinking. So no, I don't think anyone cared about Bitcoin when it launched, except for a few cypherpunks.
now if you think like nobody has control over the Bitcoin network, don't you think like the financial elite would like be
If governments cared about Bitcoin, the Chinese government would not ban Bitcoin mining. They would just take over the farms. They don't care. And the U.S. government, and there's not enough mining in the U.S. for the U.S. government to take over mining. So it's not going to happen. Venezuelan government loves to go after the miners, but these days the miners have kind of more money to pay for better security than and they pay off the government. So.
But do you think, well, in that scenario, that the financial elite will align with all the cryptocurrencies, or what will it happen?
Governments aren't very good at cooperation. And they got bigger problems. I mean, like everyone in America, half the government in America wants to overthrow Trump. Like the last thing they care about is Bitcoin.
I have another question. Well, simple one. If you are, living here in Mexico and trying to see a stable coin for you to change your pesos or your fiat here in Mexico to something to prevent a devaluation, the true USD would be a good idea to change.
Right, but yeah, true USD is the Binance token, right?
No.
Whose token is that?
I don't know. It's not. No, that's the like true US dollar.
Yeah.
Well, who made it?
I don't know.
It's derived from Ethereum.
No, but what company made it? Like what exchange made that token?
Well, it's in some exchanges.
No, I know that, but who created it? Like, it doesn't. There's no Satoshi didn't create True. Someone had to create it, right? Some company created it. TUSD.
It is trust tokening. That's the company who created it.
Trust.
Well, what is the nearest to 20?
The question is, if you are in fear of a potential devaluation of the money, instead of having it in the banks, change it, not for having a, I don't know, like in Bitcoin or something to win money, but to have a secure position of your money in a.
No, but it's a tether problem, right? Like True USD, it's backed by US dollars, right?
Yeah.
Where is the money? And it's dollars, right? But where is the money? Like the US government can go and freeze the money the same way they froze Tether's money. So that's not a solution. Like it's not a solution. You need if the government of Mexico and US has approved it, then you can use it and not worry about the money being frozen.
It's in some Mexican big exchanges like Kitso.
Well, the token is. But where is the money that underlies the token is the question. Like the token is only as good as the confiscatable asset that gives it its stability. But because that asset is confiscatable, we just learned that the Tether dollars were frozen and can be confiscated.
What do you think about cryptos backed by gold? Like
Same problem.
Yeah.
Same Tether problem. We had a crypto backed by gold. It was called eGold. Who remembers the story of eGold? I should have put it in my presentation. So eGold was around in the 90s, I think. Oh, I'm still screen sharing. I'm actually screen sharing the frozen live chat. So I can Google eGold. So eGold. Forgot I was screen sharing. So when did eGold go down? So here it is, right? eGold was a digital gold currency operated by Gold and Silver Reserve under eGold Ltd. That allowed users to open an account on their website denominated in grams of gold and other precious metals. the ability to make instant transfers of value, faster than Bitcoin, to other e-gold accounts. The e-gold system was launched online in 1996. It had grown to 5 million accounts by 2009, when transfers were suspended due to legal issues. At its peak in 2006, e-gold was processing more than 2 billion worth of spends annually. So what happened to e-gold? The government showed up and took the gold and arrested the creators of e-gold. And it was yes, it was on a centralized database, right? But it doesn't matter. If you launch e-gold today and the token is on Ethereum, you can't stop the token, but you can take the gold. Now, you may have some jurisdictional issues. It's hard for the US government to go into some jurisdictions like Hong Kong and Singapore and take the gold, but they can talk to those jurisdictions and just make a phone call and say, hey, your country is storing gold. That gold is backing a digital asset. We have proof that this digital asset is being used in terrorist activity. What are we doing about this? And the end result is going to be you can't use this token. How do you destroy the token? Confiscate the gold. And then the token is useless. So any token that is backed by something that is confiscatable can be confiscated.
And next question, like, do you consider possible that Ripple is going to be a global currency, or that JPM coin is gonna borrow Ripple, or?
It would be a very sad world if Ripple becomes an actual global currency. Like it would be just crazy. I can't wait till Ripple disappears. It's a totally useless token. Like the people that work at Ripple have to know it's a useless token. But if they admit it, they go to prison at this point, right? So they're stuck.
JPM coin?
That's just a digital version of the US dollar. It'll be pegged to the dollar. It's not, it's going to be a stable coin.
So
Ripple is not a stable coin. Ripple is still being traded by 12-year-olds on decentralized exchanges, the anonymous exchanges. There are no decentralized.
So you say that the future of economy is going to be a digital currency of dollars?
I think that the government currencies aren't going anywhere. I think the government currencies are staying. I think Bitcoin is just going to be a little check on them. Like gold wasn't a big enough check. Not enough people would run to gold to exit the country's currency. But as more and more merchants, as more and more people have Bitcoin, people will run to Bitcoin if the government starts doing crazy things with their currency. So if in 20 years, all Bitcoin has done is force the governments to be more responsible with the way they run the economic system, then, you know, Bitcoin did a good thing for the world. I would also love to see tax revenue go through the Bitcoin blockchain.
So, what do you think? Do you think that, for example, a lot of people is saying that, for example, the S&P 500 is going to fail, like in the next year? And
I've been hearing that since the first time I ever bought a stock.
okay, but the question is, do you think, even if it's continue going up or it goes down, do you think it will affect, in a way, Bitcoin in a negative or positive way?
I think, so the question is about the stock market. People have been predicting that the stock market will die forever, and they've been wrong for 100 years. So can the market crash significantly? Sure. The U.S. So again, we're talking about the potential collapse of the U.S. government and the stock market. So if there was another 2008 panic, I do think that it could cause a problem for Bitcoin, the way it caused a problem for gold. So let me see here. So gold crashed by 33% in 2008 because when the economy crashes hard and businesses are and everyone's going out of business and people are losing their jobs, they sell what's valuable to feed their family. And that's why they sold gold, and that's why people will sell Bitcoin. Now, if the panic is not that bad, it can help Bitcoin. Like the euro breaking up will help Bitcoin. And the euro's going down, so let's see what happens. So it depends on the panic. It depends what happens. It's too early to tell. But I'm not expecting a catastrophic crash of the stock market anytime soon. I'm more sure the 1929 crash could be coming, but not before we have the raging 20s. So I think the robotics boom is coming. I think robots are going to take over. Still waiting for the self-driving car. I think the robots are going to take over. I think the economy will boom, and then there could be a serious crash. I mean, 3D printing has been promising us all kinds of stuff. Still don't see it. But I mean, I still think the future is bright, but then there could be a serious crash. Is that a question? Oh yeah, I haven't even looked at the price action. Yes. Let's take a look at the price. We may or may not be live streaming, so I'll screen share it again.
Don't you think if machines take over, they are going to use a crypto instead of government issued?
That's a good question. The question is, if the machines are going to take over, are they going to use crypto or a government currency? Well, it depends who's programming the machines. And it depends if the machines are self-aware. And it will depend on the AI technology. And it will depend on regulation, right? I mean, will the regulation allow robots to have their own money? I remember one of my friends, Jonathan Mohan, did a presentation long ago. And I talked about, well, if you have a self-driving car and the self-driving car has an AI and you pay the self-driving car in Bitcoin, then the car is accumulating Bitcoin, and the car knows when it has to go to a mechanic to fix things because of the internal computer. So the car can just go to a mechanic, and it can pay the mechanic in Bitcoin, and then the car can make money. And when the car has a lot of savings, the car can lease other cars, and like the car can be its own business, because now the car has an independent currency that can be seized or confiscated. So it really depends on the code of the car. That would be an interesting world. All right, so here's the 4-hour chart. The 4-hour chart is running into a bit of a resistance with moving average. It's on a 6 of 9 sequential. So it's got a few candles to go. The hourly chart, so the triangle that I talked about in my morning video from the airport did break down, but it looks like it was a bit of a head fake. But guess what? I can now cheat, kinda, and redraw this triangle. Like that. And this is the hourly chart, and it's also on a 6. We are going up, and to me, at this point, Bitcoin needs to recover back to this high. If Bitcoin can recover, wherever that is, because that's blocking, if Bitcoin can recover to 5,500, then this news did not affect the market. And I may have to admit that the bottom was in if we can go above 5,500. The answer is may. I still want to see it break 6,200. I want it to go above the breakdown level. But I will, if we can make it back to 5,500. On our last video, I was 40% confident that the bottom was in. If we can go back above 5,500, I'll be 45% confident that the bottom is in. I will move my percentage up because I think that this news, I think that more bad news should come soon. I think that by the end of the weekend, I think there'll be another news event that's going to be perceived as bearish. So I would rather look for shorts right now than longs. Now, those shorts may not work out, but the beauty is I would love to pick up a good short, and my stop loss would be 5,500. Now, it's not like my last short. My last short had a very tight stop loss. And I recognized it very quickly that it wasn't going to keep going down. I missed this short because I was like too busy down in Guadalajara. But I would love to pick up a short. But if my stop loss is $500 away, I would adjust my position size and leverage accordingly so that it's a proper trade. Like this candle right here, like I would have said, hey, I think sometime tonight we should reverse and start to go back down. But I'm not confident enough in that statement to put a bet on it. But to me, now it is ripe for a short squeeze, but I still think that news, I think more bad news is coming. Whether it's really bad news or is perceived as bad news is almost irrelevant. But I think maybe the news won't break over the weekend, but sometime next week, I think there'll be other news events that will be perceived as bearish. No, I'm good on the coffee.
So basically, hold for your bitcoins. Right,
like
of the year, next year.
Look, I honestly think that if you haven't sold your Bitcoin yet, and you haven't sold them in the entire bear market, at this point, I don't think it's worth the risk of selling them. Like if you held to this point, just keep holding. Like the last time to get out of the market was in October at 6,000. At this point, it may not be time to buy, but it's definitely not the time to sell your hodl position. The time to sell your hodl position was between November of last year, and I know in November we went from about 5,000 all the way up to like 15, but and topped in December. But the time to get out of Bitcoin was between late November of 2017 up until October of 2018. After the big fall from 6,000 to 3,000, at this point, it is time to accumulate or time to buy strategically. Like if you properly sold, as long as you buy back lower than you got in, you've done well and you avoided, potential divorce. Now is not the time to sell your hodl position. I would look to accumulate or strategically just wait. Get ready to liquidate some stuff and buy if it falls below 3,000. I will. And if it doesn't, then you pick it up on the bounce. Like I'd rather get in late and watch it go straight up. Like for example, if I go back If I have the weekly chart, because the daily is just going to be too busy. So I'll look at the weekly chart, one of them anyway. Right. Like, look, the true bottom showed up in January of 2005. But Bitcoin was pretty low. Bitcoin was $300 in December of 2014, falling from 1,200, right? So it had fallen 75%, right? For 300, had fallen 80%, or 75, one of those, right? Look, I would rather buy Bitcoin over here at 900 than buy it here at 300 and watch it go to 150. And then watch it go back to 300 and then watch it go back to 160. Because the probability of me panicking and selling and never getting back in is high. I would rather miss all of this. I mean, I was screaming to buy Bitcoin here at 500 over here because of this ascending triangle that's not drawn on a weekly chart. But even if you miss this, buying Bitcoin at the all-time high at 1,000, I think is a smarter move than buying it at 300, watching it go to 150. Because buying it right here at the breakout of all-time high at 1,000 and immediately never losing money on that position, watching it go to 20,000 is will add years to your life versus potentially losing years to your life in stress of buying it in late 2014 at 300 and then dealing with another year in a losing position, right? So I am okay with getting in late as long as I'm getting in right. But that's me. Any other questions? Yeah, see, this is a weird candle, right? Like it wants to break out, but it also wants to break down. Like if I zoom in on that candle, you'll see it. Like these last couple of candles, it looks like they're consolidating at the top, but it also looks like they went back to the last level of the breakdown and are ready to go down again. Like it's, and look at the dying volume, right? Like this is a 4-hour chart too. Like there's no volume. It's like no one knows what's going on. Everyone's waiting for someone to tell them which way it's gonna go. Everyone's waiting for someone to make a big trade. Or some news. Yeah, so the question is my thoughts on the coming halving. Wow, it's a rough question, right? So unfortunately, this wasn't recorded. My best speech about the halving, the last halving, the speech about the 2016 halving. 2016 halving took place in June. There was a conference in San Diego, Inside Bitcoin San Diego. Anybody there? San Diego's not far. Inside Bitcoin San Diego. And there was an article written about that. It was a good article, but there was something else that I said. I was on a panel. Brock Pierce was on a panel, and I had some funny quotes. I am screen sharing, and this will be live. Hold on. It's in Tone Vase. God, I love the internet. Inside Bitcoins. If you have a memory, internet's great because you can search Google. Inside Bitcoins, San Diego. If I can spell San Diego correctly, E or A. Inside Bitcoin, Tone Vase, Inside Bitcoin San Diego. Give me dates. There it is, December, that's the one. That's the one. December 21st, 2015. No, it's good. Still love the internet. That was it, right? No. So there I am. There I am in the corner right there. Michael Turpin moderating. Brock Pierce was probably in the corner there. You don't see him. Trying to think who else was notable on that panel. I think the Tether creator was on that panel. So there was I said, and there was a question from the audience about the upcoming halving that was 6 months away. But that's not what the article focused on. So remember, this was 2015. Tone Vase hinted at, okay, wait. One of the key points, multiple individuals from Zappo CEO was on the panel. I don't think Gavin Andreessen was on the panel. Might have been. When it comes to private blockchains, this was back in the days of, the private blockchains were popular. They still are. They just don't call them that. Private blockchains is that these solutions aren't much different from traditional database technologies. In fact, a synchronized MySQL server may make more sense than a blockchain when a decentralization is not the top priority. Tone Vase hinted at this issue during the recent panel discussion, as he noted. So what did I say? I'm still waiting for the day they're going to figure out, and it's going to be soon, that the whole concept of blocks will be irrelevant, and you take Bitcoin out of it. So very soon it's just going to be a chain. No, that's not the good phrase. Okay, here's another one. I like Brock's point. I actually okay, about the intranet versus the intranet. Nope, that's not the quote. Wow, they quoted me a lot there. Here we go. Bitcoin itself is the revolution. It's an asset, like mentioned earlier. The asset creates regulatory arbitrage, which is a new term I love using. If you're not building something that involves a blockchain, Bitcoin or whatever you want to call it, if you're not utilizing the regulatory arbitrage property of Bitcoin, I believe you're wasting your time, because whether it's R3 or chain, which I don't know what happened to them, or any one of the following, including R3, I don't understand why the finance people at Swift and the developers at Oracle don't just get together and build a better and faster database. Man, here we go. The best developers in the space work for Bitcoin. They're the best developers. There's nobody they can hire. I mean, the companies like R3Sev, they will hire failed Bitcoin core developers, and I'm not going to name any names, but they just did hire one recently, and that was, of course, Mike Hearn. But so they focused on that stuff in the article, but I don't know why I went off on a tangent, but my views haven't changed. So that was December. So here's what I said on that panel that unfortunately wasn't recorded or documented. So this was back in December. Let's go back to the price of Bitcoin, the weekly chart of Bitcoin. The weekly chart of Bitcoin back in December was right here. The price of Bitcoin was around $400. Now the halving came in July, and I was saying that the traders are gonna preemptively buy into Bitcoin, and I was saying that 6 months out. I was saying you gotta get into Bitcoin because everyone is gonna buy in for the halving. Now it actually happened later than I expected. The panic into buying into the halving took place in May. May, June, July. It was 3 months ahead of time. I was expecting the run up, and you can see it in this chart. One of the reasons why I was calling for the bottom in October is because October is about 6 months away from the next halving. So last time, traders were rushing into Bitcoin about 2 months, 2 to 3 months before the halving. The smart ones were starting to accumulate. I think this year, the closer we get to the halving, the more people are going to look at what happened in the last halving. And the speculators are going to want to pre-run other speculators. So I think for this halving, the buying is going to start earlier. Last time it was 2 months. This time it's going to be 4 to 5. So if the halving is going to come in May, and that is potentially debatable, I got to look at the stats when the halving is, because we did lose some hashing power. We lost hashing power to the Bitcoin forks. We lost hashing power to the drop in the price of Bitcoin. So I don't know if the halving is still in May or it's going to be a little delayed. But I think a good 4 to 5 months before the halving, the price is going to pump on the halving. So let's say around December and January. But it'll really depend on what happens here. So that's another reason why I think the price will drop one more time.
You can also look at the price of Litecoin.
When is the Litecoin halving?
It's going to happen in August here.
In August of this year. So what month is this? Almost May? May, June, July, August. See, I don't know if we can do that. Because Litecoin is still very correlated to Bitcoin. And like I've been saying, I think the halving in Litecoin is going to hurt Litecoin. Because as much as people love to talk about how they are Litecoin, see, there's no Litecoin maximalists. The closest you get to a Litecoin maximalist also has to believe in Bitcoin. And by believing in inflation, by believing in insecure, useless inflation on top of Bitcoin, that person also has to believe in other currencies. So they're not committed to Litecoin. As much as they have all of that Litecoin branding all over their Twitter and whatever it is, these people are generally anonymous because they don't really want to put their name to it because they don't want to be embarrassed. They want to stay anonymous Litecoin people, and they will become committed to another coin if the opportunity presents itself. So I don't believe that in 10 years, anyone will be mining Litecoin at a loss. But plenty of people will be mining Bitcoin at a loss. No critical infrastructure, no critical business needs Litecoin to survive. But numerous businesses need Bitcoin to survive. If your business needs Bitcoin to survive, you will allocate profits of that business as an expense to mine Bitcoin and keep it decentralized and keep it secure. This aspect of economics does not exist in Litecoin. So as a Litecoin keeps halving, the mining reward gets smaller. And the incentive to keep mining Bitcoin starts to disappear. The incentive to create new hardware and research and development starts to disappear. Bitmain was the main hardware developer for shitcoins, and look what happened to them. What is a company? What company is going to invest in altcoin research and development to improve mining? I would love to hear an answer to this. Is Bitfury going to do it? Is Canaan going to do it? Who's going to do it? Right? So I don't see any new technology in mining script coming. And I don't see an economic incentive to mine inflation on top of Bitcoin that isn't actually inflated, that's deflated. Like, it doesn't make sense. So I think the halvings will hurt Litecoin more than help. And I think depending on what happens in Litecoin for its halving and projecting that onto Bitcoin, may be correlated, but I would be careful. I would be a little cautious on putting too much emphasis on the two. But yeah, but it should be kept an eye on. Is this going to be their second, third halving? It's their third. It's going to go from 25 to 1250. But they started with more, right? They started with, they didn't start with 50. They started with, well, they started with 50 as well. Litecoin started with 50. They just have blocks more often. And do they have more often? Right, but the halving is still every 4 years, or is it sooner? Okay. I think I answered the question. Okay, so no, I didn't answer the question. So I think that the Bitcoin pump for the halving will start 4 to 5 months, which puts it in the end of the year. And that is why the end of the year was my most likely time target for the bottom. Unless we hit 13 to 1500 before the end of the year, right? So if you've been watching me for a while, I had 3 price targets and 3 time targets. And my earliest time target was the beginning of this year, which we hit. My highest price was 5,000. So I really needed either my lowest price target. I had 3 price targets: 5,000, 3,000, 1,300. I had 3 time targets: end of last year, early this year, summertime, and end of the year. So the worst case scenario would have been 1,300 in October, November of 2019. The best case scenario would have been 5,000 at the end of last year. We hit the earliest time target and the middle price target. I would have liked it either middle, or one of the extremes. And then I would have also been calling a high probability of a bottom. But because we hit my earliest time target and my middle price target, I still think one of the other two is coming. Either the bottom is still going to come later in the year, and the bottom might be like a stall. Like if we're still at 5,000 going into October, I'll probably say the bottom's in. And that would be a good call. You know, you remove the stress and you got in at 5 and watch it go to 50. I'm okay with that call. But I'm still nervous. We still have 2 time targets to go and 1 price target to go. But I think that the chances of the bear market lasting into the halving is 5 to 10%. I think no matter what, I think the bottom is going to be in by end of the year. Whether the bottom is already in or it's coming, I don't believe it's going to drag past the halving. We good? I think that's a good time to end it. Wow, I've been talking for like 3 hours. Thank you, guys. Let's show the bar. There you guys are. Awesome. Thank you so much for the invite. And it's time to have maybe 1 more tequila and maybe a ribeye. All right, guys, I'm going to stop the recording locally. I'll post this up. I'm going to delete the live stream. So keep in mind, if you're still watching, God help you. But because of copyright issues, I will be deleting this, and I'll try to post the recording of the Q&A.